Hello, everyone. Welcome to TSAM Digital. My name is Anna, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Brian Lynch, the president of SteelEye US. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. Brian, to get us started today, would you like to tell us a little bit about what SteelEye does?
Certainly, yes. I'd like to actually start with why SteelEye does what it does. So, SteelEye, we operate in the regulatory space, and everyone knows globally regulations are challenging and have been consistently under pressure due to changes in regulations, cost pressures, and the enhancement in capabilities that are required to stay ahead of the markets themselves. So SteelEye, what we've done is created a powerful regulatory data platform. And by starting with the data and solving for the data challenge, that's enabled us to hang various regulatory solutions off of that data. And today, the solutions that are most dominant in our stack are our holistic surveillance solutions. So basically, because we combine both trade and communications data into the single data platform, we can provide compliance professionals with unmatched transparency into and insights into the regulatory oversight activities that they are responsible for. So that's what we do. It starts with the data, but really it's about the solutions that we then provide on top of that data to help compliance professionals.
So it was really fascinating. Thank you so much for the intro. Actually, today we wanted to talk about supervisory oversight. So firstly, I sort of wanted to ask, what are the rules surrounding supervisory oversight?
So, it's interesting, right? The rules around oversight, they're really secondary rules. Right? The primary rules are don't do this, right? Don't do it. Don't manipulate the markets. Don't use inside information to gain an unfair advantage. That's really what the regulators are trying to achieve. They're not trying to achieve oversight for the sake of oversight. But of course, there are always bad actors. There are always people who are going to either, intentionally or unwittingly break the rules. And so the oversight rules are designed to try and prevent that. And they differ. In the UK and Europe, post MiFID, they become very specific and very prescriptive. And the market abuse regime has allowed firms to basically implement programs that where they understand exactly what the regulators are looking for. We look in the US, the rules tend to be broader. They're older. They're relying on rules that date back to the 1934 Securities Exchange Act, and they need a little bit more interpretation, especially as the markets evolve. In the US, there's a very clear requirement to have reasonable oversight. The question is, what's reasonable? Reasonable tends to change as the markets change, as the data becomes more available, as technologies improve. What might have been reasonable or considered to be unreasonable 10 years ago might be very reasonable today. So even though the rules aren't changing, the outcomes might change based on how the world evolves.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to ask, what are the challenges with ensuring supervisory oversight?
So the challenges, well, the biggest challenge tends to be that bad actors, bad people tend to be quite smart. There's a lot of data involved, and the rules aren't black and white. So when you're a compliance professional, there's a lot of judgment and intelligence that's required to really ascertain whether you're doing enough and whether you're actually going to identify potential bad actors. The thing about regulations is that if nothing's happening, if you're doing your job and nothing's happening, there's no bad actors, then no one's going to come in and say, "Great job, you're doing wonderfully." But as soon as something bad does happen, then it's like your fault because you didn't catch it. So firms don't want to miss anything. They want to be applying the rigor that is demanded to do the job. But they also don't want to deal with thousands of false positives, right? You don't want to be looking at everything. You can't be analyzing every single trade and every single communication. So there's a balance that has to be struck between how you do this, and you have to use technology to the best possible effect to try and identify the signals that are true indications of potential malfeasance versus just business practices that are evolving. So that's where it tends to be, is like, how do you maintain the accuracy and the efficiency of a compliance program given the vast amounts of data that are created every day in the execution of regular business activities? And that's where the challenges tend to come out.
So why is holistic surveillance important for asset managers?
Well, holistic surveillance is the only way that a compliance professional can get all of the perspective that they require to really feel like they're on top of their activities. When we look at trading activity, market news, communications, people's calendars, right? Who an analyst, a research analyst met with in the last week might be germane to whether they have material non-public information, their research notes. All of that is relevant to a compliance professional who is trying to oversee their business activities. And if that data sits in silos, the chances of something falling through the cracks are high, and the chances of there being a very inefficient process where firms have to analyze their trading activity, then go to their communications, then go look what's happening in the market. If you're having to jump between systems, that's inefficient and it's probably going to impact your accuracy. So we believe that holistic surveillance is the best way to try and bring efficiency to the market, bring transparency to the market, but still provide the accuracy that firms demand.
And how does communication surveillance fit in here? How do firms ensure compliance when staff use channels such as WhatsApp, for example?
Well, probably all nefarious activities require some form of collaboration. If you think about the historical headlines that we see, right, it tends to be actors working together across different organizations, sharing information. And as the channels through which we can share information proliferate, it becomes harder and harder to figure out who these actors are and how are they connected and how are they getting the information that they need. Post-pandemic or during the pandemic, that blew up even further as we all work from home. People using Zoom, people using WhatsApp, iMessage, texting each other. It's very hard in a work from home environment to monitor for that type of activity. When everyone is sitting in the same desk, sitting in a trading floor, you can actually prevent them using their mobile phones. A lot of trading floors would have banned mobile phones being on the floor at all, right? Now you can literally record what's happening on your screen and no one knows about it. So basically the ability to scour and ingest more and more data and to be able to cover those channels is the only way that you can stay ahead of the conversations that might be leading to the types of activities that you're surveilling for.
Thank you very much for that. Lastly, I wanted to ask, do you have any best practices that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think the one that may be a little bit self-serving, but the one that I think is most important is to continue to invest in innovation. Compliance has historically tended to be an area that folks might have underinvested in. One of the problems with compliance is that it isn't a profit center, right? You're not going to put $10 million in and get a $20 million return. So it's often difficult to really understand how do you communicate the business case. Fortunately, some high-profile cases out there, and the steady increase in scrutiny and investigations from regulators is helping compliance professionals to make that business case. And I think that firms need to listen and they need to innovate because the market is moving constantly. Technology is moving in our favor, right? And against us, right? The ability for people to use technology against firms is increasing, but actually there's a lot of data that's being created, and the analytics and the ability to get transparency out of that data is only improving. So I think firms need to use technology to get ahead of their compliance programs, and they need to know that there's never an end game, right? There will always be changes. There will always be new malfeasance to analyze for, and you just need to stay ahead of it. You can't. It's like being a shark, right? You can't stop. If you stop, you die.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian, for this discussion. It's been really lovely having you with us today. Looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks very much for having me.